Welcome back. This is part 2 of my conversation with Sandra Bonhomme-Gilliam, PhD in nutrition and certified French pastry chef. Good for you if you've already checked out Sandra's YouTube and Instagram. She is dang smart and precious. Videos about mushroom farming are on this channel. I will share with you how it's done and whether it could be right for you. But for now, let's talk about mushrooms on your plate.
Hello, I'm Sandra, PhD in nutrition and French pastry chef. And today I am so excited to share this conversation with Catherine Kay. She's the founder of MycoEarth and a true pioneer in showing how fungi can nourish our bodies and heal our soil. This is part 2 of our deep dive into the intelligence, nourishment, and healing power of mushrooms.
Thank you for allowing me to share with your audience today about the fungal pharmacy. This is a fun presentation. We're going to talk about how to cook mushrooms, what happens in our body when we eat them, and how to use them in medicine as well. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about mushrooms and nutrition. They're calorie poor. Now, what else would you love to say is something is poor? That's usually not a very good word. They don't have very many calories and zero fat, by the way, until we prepare them. But we're going to talk about how to prepare them so that you don't have as much or you have the good with it only. So they're very nutrient rich. They're high in protein, which is an interesting thing. Their protein in a mushroom is actually more digestible in the body than the protein in chicken, which is more easily digested than beef, right? Or pork.
Oh yeah,
so
much more.
Yes, and I love that about that. Now, B vitamins, we've mentioned that. There's B5, there's B12, there's lots of Bs in there. And the B vitamins actually help convert food into energy. So if you don't have that, you're going to be lethargic, right? You don't have the energies that you need. They have minerals in them that few other foods have. So we need to be having a mineral-rich diet in order to keep our immune system as healthy as it can be so that we are stronger against any sort of illnesses or sicknesses and so forth, okay? They have a unique compound in them called beta-glucans, which is a weird kind of fungal fiber. Mm-hmm. But it straightens up the immune system. I mean, if you can picture immune system being a sunflower that's a little wilty, those beta-glucans will just help make that immune system just straight up and strong again. And they have complete amino acid profiles, which
it's so interesting for vegetarians and mostly vegan people too.
Yes, it gives you another alternative other than beans, for example.
Yes.
For the protein, and yes.
And it's much more digestible also than the beans, for example, unless it's made properly, it's cooked properly and prepared properly, but mushrooms are just directly super digestible. So,
and that is so important. The number of people that have gut issues are a lot more than what you may think. Hundreds of thousands of people in this country have gut issues. And I know that you would love to just sit down with them and hold their hand and tell them a few things. I know you well enough to know that that's true.
I'm like holding, but you're preaching the choir, Catherine.
So for oyster mushrooms, let's just take a look at those. This nutrition facts thing that is on every label. It's a wonderful thing, and it really doesn't tell you everything. Right? There's so much behind the scenes, but obviously you can't have a label that's 6 feet long on everything. And I've taken a look at the 6 feet long mushroom nutrients for oyster, and it's pretty doggone amazing. So the pictures, let's talk about those. Each one of these are an oyster mushroom. And oyster refers to the shape and not the flavor. A lot of people are concerned about eating an oyster mushroom because maybe they don't like seafood, and one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. So from a mushroom farming standpoint, here's what I could say to a chef. In the summertime, let's go with the pink ones. And in the winter time, let's go with the blue ones. Okay. So I know that I can create a deeper color if I do that, because at the farm, I'm controlling the environment within the grow room, because we're trying our best to mimic nature, right? Because not all of these mushrooms would come out at the same time of year. One would want the temperature cooler, and one, like the ones that are standing straight up there, the king oyster mushrooms, they don't grow at all in nature unless, of course, they are hidden inside of leaves and branches and so forth. And the reason for that is because when they breathe in oxygen like people, and they breathe out CO2 like people, they need to have that CO2 close to them. So they actually want to breathe back in a little bit of their own exhale. And that's what creates the shape and the size and so forth. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So at the farm, we have to keep all of these things in mind to be able to grow them. So let's get back to nutrition. 0 calories, my friends. And obviously no cholesterol. And the sodium is only 1%. I mean, it's just tiny, tiny, tiny. What is so cool to me is the vitamin D. Now, mushrooms don't use photosynthesis like a plant does to be able to create energy, to create their food. Okay. Their food is what they're decomposing. So it's the strawberry they're decomposing. It's the wood out in the nature, the downed tree that they're decomposing. In the farm, they're decomposing sterile oak sawdust or sterile straw. Okay, so those are the kinds of foods that we give them to grow, but they're doing what they do in nature, which is to decompose. But what's interesting is plants can produce, the sun produces the vitamin D, and a mushroom doesn't have to have sun. In other words, you'll kill them with full sun. They like the shade, right? They like it moist, they like it shady, but yet they have vitamin D in them. They're the only thing in the produce aisle at the grocery store that actually has vitamin D in it. And I just find it so fascinating.
And so do we know how they produce that vitamin D?
Science hasn't figured it out yet, but I have a theory.
Of course, you do,
Catherine. When there are plants and fungi, so the plant is in the soil, the fungi is in the soil. As you know, the plant root that comes in contact with the fungi, there's an exchange that's happening there, right? So the mushroom will bring in water and nutrient from the plant way beyond the root ball, could be hundreds of miles beyond the root ball sometimes. But it'll bring in what it needs. But what does the fungi get in return? Well, it gets the sugar, it gets the glucose from the plant. So there's a symbiotic relationship that is an exchange there. That's where I think they're also getting the vitamin D, because it's the plant that is full face in the sun. I haven't found a research report to substantiate that claim, but we're going to call that good for right now, because because where would it come from, right? It's not.
I'm pretty sure you're right, because it makes totally sense that it would come from the sun, through the plant,
yes,
down to the mushroom. Somehow the mushroom know how to use some molecules from the chlorophyll and the photosynthesis from the plant.
Yes.
To transform it into vitamin D. It's just absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. And
so I think your theory, your hypothesis is really standing well.
Thank you. I appreciate you loving my hypothesis. That's awesome. One of the things that we do with mushrooms on the farm as well, we have some customers that are in Seattle, Washington. And so we dry their mushrooms and then we send them to them, but we dry them in the sun. And I don't know how this works, but when we take a look at the nutrient analysis of a mushroom that is dried on a dehydrator, for example, that has vitamin D in it, but those that are dried in the sun, they're almost quadrupled the amount of vitamin D that's in them. And then obviously in Seattle, people most generally take a large amount of vitamin D every day because of not having full sun there a lot of times. So that we can actually assist as well, and nutritionally and for their body, is to increase the amount of vitamin D that's in them.
Wow, that's even more blowing.
Right.
Yeah.
So this bottom of this nutrition fact, let's look at what that actually breaks down to. And we could spend all day right here, because very few foods have as more than 25% of a nutrient, of a micro or a macronutrient in it. And here are 4 that are 24 to 28% in a typical old mushroom. Okay. Now, copper, riboflavin, niacin, and pantothenic acid are those. But let's just look at the check marks, for example. Copper will make new red blood cells. How important is that? Keeps nerve cells healthy. And we spoke already about neuropathy and Alzheimer's. They form collagen. Right? So I mean, women across the world are taking collagen supplements, and here the copper actually helps the body form its own collagen. It helps iron be absorbed into the body, and it turns sugar into energy. If I go straight down, it helps food turn into energy again under niacin, keeps the nervous system healthy, keeps skin healthy. Up to riboflavin, fights free radicals. And get this, it changes vitamin B6 and folate into usable forms. There are people, and my daughter is one of them, whose body cannot take in folate or vitamin B6. She has to have it in other forms. And so riboflavin actually helps her body do that. Pantothenic acid is vitamin B5. And again, it turns food into energy. And it also helps tear down fats. So if we just look at 6 small oyster mushrooms, we're only talking about 3 ounces, a little tiny bit here. And the systems within the body that it can help. And I'm not going to name the systems, but we're talking about blood cells, and we're talking about nerve cells and the immune system and the skin, and to help the skin stay healthy and to turn food into energy. Just this simple little mushroom that, by the way, is sauteed properly with some thyme on it will make your socks roll up and down all by themselves, thinking nothing about the nutrients that are in them in general. Okay, selenium is important.
It's crucial too.
It's crucial. Now, selenium, this only shows up at 3 to 7%, right? But I looked at other foods and it's 0.
It's 0, yeah.
It's 0.
Very poor.
Yes, so it's antioxidant production, immune support, thyroid health, cognitive function. So we're looking at brain function, heart function, cancer prevention, right? And it helps repair DNA. Hello.
No.
I get excited about this. And I also get excited about this for people that are on restricted diets, because I took a look at other foods that were high in selenium. Brazil nuts. Highest thing on the planet that we know of in selenium. Okay. Now, if you've ever tried to crack a Brazil nut open, you may not be healthy by the time you're finished with it, because it takes forever. So seafood and shrimp, organ meats, right? Dairy and eggs. Now, let's talk for a moment about someone who's on a vegetarian diet. Okay. So can they eat Brazil nuts?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm vegetarian.
Right.
And the problem is I'm not crazy about the taste of it.
Well, there you go. That is a good point. Good point. Okay, so selenium, you're not getting it from Brazil nuts. What about seafood?
Well, as a vegetarian, I don't eat seafood.
Okay. Do you eat organ meats?
No.
What about dairy?
You know.
What about dairy?
Dairy, very, very little, and it's only from goat or sheep, not cow.
Okay. Okay. And I happen to know, well, no, you have chickens, correct?
Oh yeah, I love my
Okay.
chickens, and
Okay.
I have their eggs, like fresh eggs of the day. So yeah.
Okay. So with a person that is on your diet, what do you have available to you for selenium? There's other things other than what we see on the slide here, but in general,
it's going to be Brazil nuts and eggs.
Mm-hmm. And the Brazil nuts you don't care for, and so mushrooms at the 3 to 7%.
Exactly.
It's critical, and it's a pretty good number, correct?
Totally, and I love the taste of the mushrooms. Mostly the way you taught me how to cook them, and we're gonna see that later.
Yes, makes a big difference, doesn't it? Okay, so here we talk about cooking, and I have a picture here of those on my cast iron skillet, and we're not even there yet, so we're going to have to ignore the picture for a quick minute. I want to talk about the beta glucans, which is the weirdo dietary fiber that is in a mushroom. And I love the word weirdo, because if you're a weirdo and you love mushrooms, then you're on the right track. Let me just say that out loud. So the beta glucans, they stimulate the immune cells. Okay, do we need them? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And for the killer cells, okay, we're talking about killer cells. They fight cancer. They seek out cancer cells and kill them, and don't even kill a healthy cell that's around it. Okay, so those killer cells are amazing, and they are within those beta glucans. For those people that are going through chemotherapy, it actually helps reduce the side effects of chemotherapy, and it helps to keep the LDL, the bad cholesterol, intact. And blood sugar regulation, it actually slows the absorption of the glucose, and it has a prebiotic effect. So there's no downside there, right? And beta glucans are mushrooms are a primary source of them. They're amazing. Okay, we are going to talk about cooking.
Here we are.
All right, here we are. And from rubbery to remarkable is what I've put down here. So here's the method that we talked about, that you said to me while we were having coffee about a month ago. You said I don't cook them any other way now.
No way. No way. I don't. Since I did this, and I even cooked for guests, and they were like, how did you do for making those mushrooms so delicious, and even not crunchy, but crunchier or something, and not soft and a little gooey. And I said, well, I have a friend, and her name is Catherine, and she made it remarkable indeed.
Thank you. Let's talk about that. Okay, folks. Even if you're making a soup and you're going to add mushrooms, please do this first. This is going to seem counterintuitive, but trust me, darlings, this is wonderful. Dry saute your mushrooms in a skillet over medium-high heat. No water, no fat, no seasonings. What you're doing is that you're allowing the water that is in the mushroom to evaporate. Now, you're not trying to make them crisp. You don't want all of the water gone, but you want to saute them to release the water, okay? At that point, over medium-high heat, they will begin to brown a little bit. Mm-hmm. So that's what your guests were saying about being a little bit crisp and not a mushy thing, but they brown just a little bit, and then you turn them. And if you do it properly, you only turn them once. Okay, so you wait. You can actually see sometimes the moisture coming off of them, and you wait and you just turn them one time. Okay. Now, if you're making a soup, I would not recommend adding fat to the saute pan, but I would take them out and then I would drop them directly into the soup. Okay. Now, sometimes on the farm, we grow mushrooms that their caps are tiny. The caps are a quarter of an inch across, and we'll drop those right into the soup. And because when you take a spoonful of soup and you see a whole mushroom in there, just a tiny whole mushroom, it's wonderful. But otherwise, I would recommend doing 2 different kinds of mushrooms, one dry in your soup, one dry sauteed, and then one fresh in there together, because the umami-ness, that flavor that's difficult to describe, comes out better. So back to the sauteing. Once they're sauteed, and they're a little bit brown, feel free to add some fat to that. May it be olive oil or coconut oil, or butter, if that is the flavor that you want there, and then add your seasonings. I will tell you that if you add salt before the water is evaporated, you're going to get a gummy, chewy mushroom. And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? We're trying to avoid that texture problem that some people have with mushrooms. So you wait to add the fat and the seasonings till afterwards. Garlic is popular with them. Thyme is very popular with mushrooms. And if you've never had mushroom toast made in this fashion, where, you know, a lot of people love avocado toast, so it's kind of on the same vein there, you would be happy. Let me just tell you that. The flavors. Now, not all mushrooms taste the same. And culinary mushrooms, specialty mushrooms, have a lot of flavor to them. Button mushrooms are flavorless by comparison. Okay. When they're raw, right? When they're raw, they're flavorless. And that's just my opinion. I'm hoping not to offend anyone. But what I'm trying to say is the ones that we cultivate, there's a range of how bold those flavors can be. So sometimes they're mild. For example, a golden oyster mushroom, when they're sauteed in this manner, you can smell what smells like nuts. There's a light nutty flavor and scent to them. And other mushrooms are more like the lion's mane. They're more like a shrimp flavor. They're not fishy, but there's just that little bit of delicateness of a seafood in them. So you get the different flavors, but cooking them this way improves the texture. It gets rid of the mushiness, and it improves the texture with a little bit of a crisp, and the flavor, and get this, the nutrition also goes up. In a specialty mushroom, the nutrition is enhanced when they're heated through.
That was my next question, because I am the ambassador of the raw food, let's say, and I know it's not easy for most of the people to have raw vegetables, but there are ways, to get accustomed to it if you're inflamed in your guts.
Yes.
But which is true is that you have the full micronutrients and micronutrition and macro if it's still raw. But so how does it work for the mushroom that actually you're saying that it releases even more nutrition as it's being cooked?
I don't have an answer for you. I believe in the research that I've done, what I believe is happening is when you prepare the mushroom for cooking, for example, if this is the cap, you can strip the cap like right down to the gills, right? You can just tear it, but you're tearing open the cell with that. You're actually splitting a cell wall. And again, it's my hypothesis, but I believe that this is what's happening is that cell wall is split, and when it's heated, it releases more.
I see.
I'm going to call it magic. I'm just going to call it magic.
I think you're right. I think mushrooms are magical anyway.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the other things I recommend when you cook is if you combine different kinds together, you use them both cooked and raw together, especially in a soup where they will be cooked. A chef will tell you when they have an award-winning tomato soup, it's because they use different kinds of tomatoes. And one of them they roasted, and the other they dehydrated and then rehydrated. They're prepared differently. So they're different kinds of mushrooms in different stages of preparation that all came together to make the soup that you don't have words for. That's an award-winning tomato soup. The same is happening with the mushroom if you combine them. So one of the other things I like to tell people is they get a little confused when you look at a recipe and it says wild mushroom soup or wild mushroom and rice. It's like, what's a wild mushroom? Do you go forage them? No. Do you just pick anything out of the grocery store? You can. You can even make a wild soup, if you want to call it wild, with button mushrooms, right? And the way that I get away with thinking like that is that, to me, any mushroom that's just wild about being in that recipe makes it a wild mushroom soup.
Oh, I see.
Because you don't see very often a mushroom soup recipe that is only at its best and most flavorful with a one particular kind of mushroom. There are those, but otherwise you can exchange the mushrooms that you have, or the ones that happen to be at the store, or the ones that you pick up from the farmer's market with, and they may not match the one that's listed in the recipe, but I'm giving you permission. This is a permission slip. Thank you, Catherine. Any mushroom that is wild about being in that recipe, you go for it. You go for it. Mushroom toast. There's probably more than 100 recipes that I've seen for mushroom toast. In general, I want your audience to notice that it has chopped thyme, garlic, salt, and pepper. Now this one has a splash of Marsala wine on it, and that is a little bit much. But to me, this is dinner. So at that point, that's not too much. If it's breakfast, I would say to saute it exactly the way that we talked about. Oftentimes, I will make mushroom toast for breakfast, but I'll also put arugula on the bread, and then I put those warm sauteed mushrooms on the top of it. This is a delicious, delicious way to have mushrooms and all the nutrition to go with it that we've talked about. These are the king oyster mushrooms that we looked at, where you cut them one direction and they're like a scallop, and the other direction, that's actually a mushroom steak. Same mushroom that a chef can use many, many different ways. There are recipes for pulled mushroom sandwiches, like a pulled pork sandwich with barbecue sauce and all of that. There are vegan restaurants that are making a pulled mushroom sandwich that people can't tell that it's not pork.
Oh my.
They love it. They love it. Here is a wild mushroom soup recipe. Now this calls for creminis. Okay. Now this one does call for a chicken stock or a veggie stock in it. But notice that it's not a cream of. Okay. In this recipe, let me take that back. I did pick one that did have some whole milk and some sour cream in it, but a recipe for Hungarian mushroom soup. Oh my goodness. It uses Hungarian paprika. And if you want to add a little cream, you can, but it's not in the general recipe. It is as rich as a dairy-based, cream-based mushroom soup. It is absolutely delicious.
Thank you so much for watching this conversation with Catherine. If you'd like to get in touch with her and learn more about what she's doing with MycoEarth, all her links and contact info are in the description below. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to subscribe. See you next time. À bientôt.
That wraps up part 2. In part 3 of our discussion about mushrooms, we go even deeper into their healing powers. Sandra and I are constantly reading scientific research. Who'da thunk it? Ancient wisdom and modern science are saying the same thing. Let's get into it.